Mark. Hi everyone, I'm Mark, and welcome to Learn English Through Stories. Introduction to English and the Top 5 Reasons to Study. Tom. Hey everyone, I'm Tom. With these lessons, we hope to give you an insight into the language you're learning. Mark. When you understand the background of a language, you get a clearer idea of why certain things are the way they are in English, and it will make the learning process much easier. Tom. And we hope to deliver it to you in an understandable and enjoyable way. Let's get started. Mark. Okay. Well, first of all, English is the lingua franca in many areas of the world. In other words, it's the language that is used between people who don't have a language in common. That's why many of our listeners are probably learning the language now, perhaps for business or school or talking with international friends. Tom. Right. And around 375 million people speak English as a native language, which comes in third with Chinese, which is in first, and Spanish, which is in second. However, if you count the non-native speakers, then it might top Chinese in first. But it also depends on whether you look at Chinese languages as languages or dialects. Mark. You're right. Because language is not always clear-cut, it's got many shades of gray. Now, when you think of English, you might think of countries like the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia, which actually do have the highest population of native speakers, and in that order. Tom. But since English is spoken by so many as a second language, the statistics change when we look at the number of total speakers in a country, and it goes the US as first, then India as second. I've seen statistics change for the third and fourth, so let's not go there. Mark. Wow, so with so many speakers from different areas, no wonder there are so many accents. And of course, there are different ways of saying things. The phrasing might change, or the actual vocabulary might mean something different altogether. Tom. And most likely you'll see it change with the changing demographics, because more and more people are learning English as the second language to be able to communicate for business purposes. Mark. And we hope to help you listeners along the way for whatever reasons you're learning it. Mark. So, Tom, what language family does English belong to? Tom. Well, it's part of the Germanic family, which is an Indo-European language. Mark. Yup, and it spread along with the British Empire, and by the late 19th century, it stretched globally. Tom. That's right, and these days, it's the official language for many countries. Mark. And it uses the Latin or otherwise known as the Roman alphabet, which is your ABCs. Tom. Right. Each letter is not necessarily pronounced what it's called, but rather a combination of it creates different sounds. Mark. This is because it has influences from several different languages. Which makes the pronunciation another story? Tom. Right. The alphabet is easy enough to learn if you don't know it already. Mark. But pronouncing the words might be a little more difficult to learn. Not only does English have so many vowels with different pronunciations, the pronunciation might change from speaker to speaker. Tom. And since many are non-native speakers, the area and environment heavily influences speech, creating different accents. Mark. And the tricky part is, a slight change in vowel may change the whole meaning of the word. Tom. Interesting. Mark. It can be frustrating for speakers at times when trying to get the pronunciation because different English speakers may sound very different. But with that said, even native speakers don't understand certain things when it comes to a different accent. I wish we could pin English to a single country so that we can talk about English with culture. But as we mentioned before, since English is an official language of so many different countries, there's no way we can do that. Tom. I grew up speaking English in America. How about you, Mark? Mark. Well, I spent some years in Canada, England, Australia, and the US, so I've seen English diversity at its best. Tom. So have you had any trouble with accents? Mark. I definitely had my fair share of accent and slang confusion, but it was interesting that I got to see the different styles that exist. Tom. Okay, we've put together a list of top 5 reasons to learn English. Mark. Okay, starting with number 5. Tom. You can surf the net. Well, you can of course surf the net in your own language, but the number of English websites exceeds the other languages. Number 4. Mark. You can do a lot of reading. English is the most widely published language, so you can get your hands on a lot of writing if you speak English. Number 3. Tom. It's the language of science, of aviation, computers, diplomacy, and tourism. It's the language used in business. So, get ahead in your careers in those fields by learning English. Since it is the language of many professional areas, it's good to learn the language for those who wish to get a higher degree, because many universities have classes in English. Number 2 is, Tom. Talk with the world. Well, since it is considered the lingua franca, or the international language, if you speak English and your friend speaking a different language can also speak English, you can talk with each other. Mark. Definitely. Although if they don't speak English, then you can always learn their language. But then that defeats the purpose of the second reason. And finally, our number 1 reason. Mark. Well, it's fun. Learning a language is fun in general, but if you factor in all the doors the English language can open up, you'll have even more fun. Tom. Of course, anyone can go through the ups and downs of learning another language, but if you stick with it and progress day by day, you'll soon hit that point when the words seem to flow smoother from your tongue. Mark. And you'll also realize that you understand a lot more than ever. So, yes, it's fun and very rewarding. Tom. Okay, everybody. Are you ready? Get out your pen and notebook, grab your iPod, turn on your computers, whatever you use to study, and get ready for some English lessons. Mark. Thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you'll tune in next time. Tom. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now. Astro Pup. Hello. My real name is Bamboo, which is quite a boring name for a dog. But nowadays, most people know me by my nickname, which is much more exciting. They call me Astro Pup. I used to live an ordinary sort of life, chewing slippers, chasing cats and birds, and generally amusing the family I lived with. They were all kind of cute, especially the little girl whose name was Jenny. Jenny used to cuddle me and take me for walks, but I always suspected that Pa didn't like me much. He never really forgave me for the time I had an accident in his new car. I was only a very small puppy at the time and hadn't learnt that you have to go outside under a tree. But after that little mishap, he always looked at me in a suspicious sort of way. One evening, after Jenny had gone to bed, I heard him say to Ma, "Of course we'll have to get rid of the dog. Jenny will be upset, but she'll soon get over it when she makes lots of new friends in Kuwait." I didn't know where Kuwait was. It might as well be a different planet as far as I was concerned, but I got the message that the whole family was moving there and Bamboo the dog wasn't going with them. I tried to explain all this to Jenny in the morning. I looked at her pleadingly with my big brown eyes while she was eating her breakfast. She sneaked me a bit of toast under the table, which was very kind of her, but it wasn't what I meant. Just then, Pa came into the kitchen and shooed me out into the garden. Nasty man. Normally, after Pa has dropped Jenny off at school, we don't see him until evening, and we can all get on with our business without being shooed and ordered about, but this time he came back home straight away. I knew that something was up. Soon he was pulling me by the lead to the back of his car. I dug my heels in as best I could, but he was much bigger than me. If you are a dog, you soon learn that it's best to trot along on the lead, rather than to sit down and be dragged. You end up at the same place, but with fewer bumps on your behind. I hopped into the car, but without any enthusiasm. Somehow, I didn't think that we were going walkies in the park. Pa drove out of the town and onto the big road. I got bored and thirsty and went to sleep on the back seat, but I didn't have any nice dreams. Eventually, I realized that Pa was parking the car, and I pressed my nose against the window to see where we were. It was a strange place, rather desperately in need of some grass and a few nice trees. It was all hot tarmac, gleaming glass, and concrete. Pa led me inside a huge building. After a long wait, a woman dressed in a white coat came to collect me. Uh-oh, I thought. This is one of those vets. I know what that means. Kind, weaselly words like, "Nice doggy, this won't hurt you," that nobody but a fool would believe. Then all of a sudden, a sharp jab in the behind. The treachery. Pa left me there without so much as a curt pat on the head. Ow you, ow you. If only Jenny knew that I was here. The woman put me, would you believe it, into a cage. The humiliation of it. Me, a loved family pet, dumped in the animal prison. For I wasn't the only creature there. I was sharing this jail with a cat, a monkey, and a parrot, each in its own cage. I couldn't even be bothered to snarl at the cat. What was the point? We were all suffering together. Ow! 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 After a while, the cat said to me, "Stop moaning pooch features. You won't be here long. They only need intelligent animals in this place." "What for?" I asked. "Why, haven't you read the poster on the wall?" asked the cat. "Oh, pardon me. I forgot for a moment. You're a dog, so you're too stupid to read. Well, I'll tell you. That's a picture of a rocket, and the writing says that this is a space center. This is where they pick animals to be astronauts and to go to places in the sky. But as I said, you needn't worry. Only intelligent animals can pass all the tests." Of course, I didn't believe her. Cats talk the most utter nonsense, you know. The cat hissed, "Stupid pooch," and I snarled through the bars of my cage. She wouldn't have dared be so rude if I could have got anywhere near her. The parrot started repeating, "Stupid pooch, stupid pooch." And I barked, and the cat screamed, and soon the woman in the white coat was in to see what all the fuss was about. Now, you three, she said. They can probably hear this racket on the other side of the galaxy. She looked cross, but she did open my cage and let me out. I felt very superior as we left the others behind. But the place she led me to smelt of disinfectant mixed with pee. That was where they gave me the soft talk followed by sharp jab in the behind. I knew it. The traitors. Soon my eyes felt heavy and I wanted to take a nap. I curled round, tucked my nose under my paw, and I was out. I woke up in a strange room. It was a bit like Pa's car, only bigger and without any windows. The cat and the parrot were there too. The cat was eyeing up the parrot as if she wanted to eat him, but the parrot was safe behind a glass wall. The cat and I were free to roam around, so at least she had to show me a bit of respect, in case I might nip her. That was good. Things had been arranged so that I was in charge. Then some lights started to flash, and there was a rumbling noise for a long time. The cat looked as sick as a parrot, and the parrot looked as sick as well, and I looked, probably much the same. A voice squawked, 10, 9, 8. I looked up and saw it was the parrot speaking. "Oh, do shut up, you stupid bird," said the cat. And it was then that the whole caboodle started to roar and shake. At first, it felt like my tummy was dropping down into my paws, and then, after quite a while, things seemed to go back to normal. It was quite dark, apart from some strange greenish lights. I wanted to go to back sleep, but the cowardly meowing of the cat kept me awake. "Listen, Mog," I said. "If we are all going to die, let's die quietly. And that's an order." But she didn't shut up until much later. Eventually, I fell asleep, and when I woke up, I saw that some breakfast had arrived in 2 bowls, one for me and one for that cat. And the cat had eaten both of them. This was too much. I decided to kill the cat and eat her instead. That would be the end of my troubles. But when I pounced on her with my teeth bared, I found that instead of shooting towards her, I was sort of floating in midair. My paws were paddling all over the place, but it made no difference. Even the parrot was impressed by my flying. The cat leapt out of my way, and she too was flying around like a fat balloon. This was all very strange. After we had both settled back down on the floor, I decided to show my leadership qualities. "Hey," I said, "those humans are probably watching us and think this is all hilarious. Let's learn to be friends, at least while we are cooped up in here, and when we get out, then we can kill each other." Even the cat had to agree that I was talking sense, and the parrot seemed too stupid to express an opinion on the matter. From then on, we lived by some rules, the most important of which was that if anybody ate my dinner, they were dead. I don't know how long that awful journey went on. I used to think that Jenny's grandma was a long way away, but this took much longer than going to her place by the seaside. Food seemed to appear when we were asleep. And although we made the usual mess that all living things make, the straw on the floor just seemed to eat it up and it disappeared. It was a clever contraption that we were in. Eventually, we heard the roaring sound and the contraption started to shake again. The cat was meowing. We're all going to die. And I didn't even bother to tell her to shut her silly snout. our journey came to its end with an almighty bump, and we were all three of us thrown around the place. This time, we didn't float harmlessly around, and we all ended up with bruises, but nothing too serious. But we soon forgot about all that when a door opened in the side of the contraption, and we were greeted by the sweetest, most gorgeous smell in the universe: fresh, salty sea air. So perhaps we had come to Auntie Jane's after all, by the roundabout route. The parrot's cage flew open and he was out in no time. The cat went sliding down a chute, and I came after her. Soon I was splashing through the surf of the sea, and the cat was looking at me like I was crazy. The parrot was sitting up on a sand dune. I hadn't been so pleased to be alive since I was a puppy. All I needed now was a stick to fetch, and my happiness would have been complete. When I came out of the sea, I shook myself so that the water went flying all over the cat and the parrot. That trick never goes out of fashion, and I woofed with joy. After a while, I barked, "Cheer up, Mog! Aren't you glad that we've arrived?" "I'd be happier if I saw a mouse," said the cat. "What are we going to eat? Unless you know how to fish, we're going to starve to death." "Don't be stupid," I said. "Some humans will come along soon and take care of us. My owner's grandma lives somewhere nearby." "Your owner's grandma?" said that cat, quite astonished. "She's only 1,000,000 miles away. Haven't you got it yet? They've sent us to another planet." The cat said that if we stayed on the beach, we would die of hunger, but I said that wasn't strictly true. We would die of thirst before we died of hunger. We argued about that point for a little while, but eventually we agreed to go inland. We climbed up the dunes and nosed our way through some long grass. The parrot flew overhead, and it was then that I saw that he had something strapped to his foot. When I pointed this out to the cat, she said, "Haven't you noticed that before? It's a camera. He's filming us, so that the humans can see what we are doing. They were too afraid to come here themselves, so they've sent us to explore and the parrot to film us." By that stage, I really didn't know whether or not to believe a word that Cat said. I was still looking out for the house of Jenny's grandma. We came to a wood and a stream and lapped up pure cold water. The cat said that proved she was right. We weren't going to die of thirst, but we were going to die of hunger. I was too tired to argue anymore. We went to sleep, and in the morning continued on our journey. I chased a few rabbits and squirrels, but didn't catch anything. The cat said that was because I yapped and made too much noise. If only I would leave the hunting to her, she would have a chance. And I told her that if only she would learn to keep her mouth shut, she would be much improved as a traveling companion. At long last, we saw a house. It wasn't the house that belonged to Jenny's grandma, but I thought that the people who lived there would know how to help us. I told the cat to fluff up her fur and look cute, if that was possible for a cat to do. I practiced waggling my ears. That usually does the trick. We went up to the door, and I woofed politely. Nobody came out, so I woofed a little louder. The parrot sat up in a tree and watched us, still pointing that camera thing on his foot at us. Then from inside, I heard something like a meow. Uh-oh, I thought. Some people like cats, and other people like dogs, and this time it looks like Mog's in luck, not me. The door opened a crack, and I prepared to waggle my ears and roll my eyes with all my might. My little tail was thumping on the ground of its own accord. But my hopes were not high, for my nostrils were filling up with the strongest smell of cat I had ever experienced. Oh no, I thought. They must have hundreds of cats in there. What a dump. The door opened more and somebody stepped out. I looked up and saw the strangest, weirdest, most horrific face I had ever seen. It was like a human face, but then it was also like a cat face. It had lips like a human, but long pointed teeth like a cat. It had a human nose, but a cat's whiskers. Its eyes were diamond-shaped, and a scary green color, and its ears were pointed. I am proud to say that I didn't whimper, and I didn't whine. In my heart I was terrified, but outwardly I was up for a fight to the death. I snarled at that dreadful cat person, and showed my teeth and all my gums. He or she or it backed off behind the door, and I slowly withdrew down the path. By the time I reached the gate, I saw that the thing had come out again and was cradling the cat, my former traveling companion, in its arms like a baby. And the earth mug had a big cheesy grin all over her smarmy face. That was the last I saw of her. I continued down the road, full of trepidation. I saw a bicycle up ahead, and for safety's sake, dived into the ditch and hid. When it got closer, I saw that its rider was Cat Person. Half of me wanted to chase it down the road, but I resisted the temptation. Next, an even stranger contraption came along. It was truly a sight that no self-respecting dog would ever want to see, and I tremble to tell you of it. It was a carriage, of the sort that I've seen in the park back on Earth. The driver and passengers were both cat people, but that wasn't the worst of it. For it was pulled along, not by horses as you would expect back home, but by two great shaggy sheepdogs. Ahow, 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 the shame of it. Dogs working like slaves for cats. By nightfall, I was more hungry than terrified, and I began to wonder if the cat's prediction of death by starvation would come true. I was so hungry I could have eaten fish, and normally I hate fish more than anything. I came to another house, and from a distance I saw two dogs, little Jack Russells, tied up to a kennel. They were both eating from a bowl, and I went up and whispered, "Hey, boys, could you spare a few morsels for a starving canine cousin?" They both looked at me like they didn't understand animal speak. So I repeated my request, and still they were dumb. Cautiously, I came forward and took a bite from their bowl. They didn't stop me, but they didn't need to. It tasted quite disgusting, and I spat it out. Only then did I see what it was. A dead mouse. Another horror to add to my long list of horrors. Dogs forced to eat mice. If you've ever wondered what a world ruled by cats would be like, and why in the universe should you have had such a dreadful thought, this is what it would be like. Disgusting and degrading from start to finish. The next morning, I was sleeping in a ditch, and I was so hungry that I was starting to regret not eating that mouse. That Mog's prediction was coming closer to fulfillment. Ah, woo! What a way to go to the next world, on an empty stomach. Oh, I forgot. I already was in a different world. Silly me. That was the hunger getting to my brain. When the dog catchers came, I was already too weak to run away. Two cat people wearing masks over their moggy features scooped me up on a spade and shoveled me into the back of a cart. I was only just aware of bumping along the road. When we arrived at the end of our journey, I saw that the cart was pulled by a couple of German Shepherd dog slaves. A cat person dragged me, half dead, into a building. At least it was filled with canine sounds, but they were far from comforting. This was a giant prison kennel, full of dogs barking and howling. I could not understand the local language on this planet, but I could tell you for sure that those weren't happy doggies. I would say they were close to going crazy. I was shown into a prison cell inside of which were 10 other dogs, but at least there was a trough of water. My fellow cooped-up pouches weren't a bad lot. Although we had no words in common, I could tell they were making the best of things. It seemed to me that they were making jokes at the expense of the cat people. It was a pity I could not have joined in, but then again, even if I could have told them that I had dropped in from another world, a world where all dogs looked down on cats and chased them up trees, a world where dogs were respected and called man's best friend, they would hardly have believed me. In fact, they would have called me Nets managed to get some light sleep, but sometime in the middle of the night, I was awoken by a light tap on the nose. I half opened one eye, so that anybody looking couldn't really tell whether I was awake or not, and I made out the shape of a bird flapping around our kennel. It took me a while to realize who it was. "Hello, Parrot," I said. "Did they lock you up here too?" "No, you stupid mutt," said the parrot. "I've come to rescue you. Hang on a mo." And with that, he flew out through the bars and started work on the bolt that kept the door shut. It was clearly a lot of effort for a parrot to slide that bolt, but he was stronger than he looked, and somehow he managed it. The door creaked open, and I got to my feet. "Hurry up," said the bird, but I couldn't leave without the others, and so I woofed to my cellmates to wake them up. They did indeed wake, but so did the guard, a great brute of a cat person. He came at us, waving a big stick, but one of the mongrels in our cage rushed at him and bit his ankle. The cat person was meowing with surprise and rage. I don't suppose any dog had dared do that to him before, but it was too late for him to raise the alarm, because we were on the way out. A sheepdog knocked over another guard on final exit, and we were free and running down the road at full tilt. The parrot flapped in front, squawking, "Follow me," and we kept on running till I could smell the sea air once again, and soon we were on the moonlit beach. 2 of the dogs from the prison had kept up with us, a speedy little whippet and the mongrel who had bit the guard by the ankle. The others had scattered into the woods. The parrot led the way back to the spaceship. "Those 2 can't come in. There's no room," he said. But I insisted. I wasn't going to leave my own kind behind in this dog-forsaken cat world. So in they came, and the door closed behind us. We waited an awfully long time, and some cat people must have found the rocket, because we could hear them clawing on the side of the spaceship. But then it began to rumble and roar. I hope we singed a few cat whiskers on takeoff. On the long journey home, the parrot explained quite a bit to me. He was the most highly qualified bird working at the Space Center. He could speak several languages, including bird language, animal language, and was totally fluent in human language, too. He had passed all the Space Center's trickiest tests and exams with flying parrot colors. As a result, he had been selected for this incredibly important mission. You see, a deep space probe had discovered a new planet. The evidence suggested that the planet was chiefly inhabited by cats and dogs. The top scientists decided to send a cat and a dog from Earth as ambassadors. But as none could be found who spoke human language, it had been decided to send this most extraordinary parrot to go with us and report back. The scientists wanted us back on Earth so they could watch the film and see what the planet and its inhabitants looked like. Oh boy, they were in for a surprise. We were happy, though, for we knew we were traveling to a world where we would be respected and fed nice food out of tins. The other two dogs started to learn some of our language, and I was able to tell them that next time they set eyes on a Mog, they could chase the scoundrel up a tree. We landed once again with a nasty bump. They really ought to design a spaceship with a soft landing. It just goes to show that the people who make those things never travel in them. When the door opened, we slid down the slide onto hot sand. It was so hot that it made our paws want to dance. But soon enough, people arrived in buggies traveling over the sand dunes, and some of them were pointing cameras at us. We were taken back to a big house where more people were waiting and clapping. We were led inside and watered and fed to our hearts' and stomachs' content. Some nasty vets did take a look at us, but a short, sharp jab in the behind was a small price to pay for returning back to a decent world where cats know their place. It was certainly a hot and sunny country, though. I asked the parrot where we were, and he said it was called Kuwait. Kuwait. That sounded familiar, but after all my adventures, I couldn't quite say where I had heard that name before. It was only later that evening when I heard a lovely voice calling, "Bamboo, do you remember me?" when I twigged it. Yes, this was where my family had come to live, and now Jenny had come to meet me. How lovely it was to see my best friend. She was cuddling me and kissing me and telling me that I was her hero. She had seen me on the television news, and they had dubbed me Astropup. I wasn't allowed home for a week or two while the Space Center did tests on me, but now I'm back with Jenny in her new house in Kuwait. Sometimes I see the other two dogs from the cat planet. They've found good homes too and are spoiled rotten. There's a cat who lives in a house nearby, but I can't even be bothered to chase him. He's beneath my contempt. Occasionally, I'm invited onto a television or radio show, and they show the pictures the parrot took of me as I snarled at that evil cat person. Pa likes to boast about me, as if he was the one who had trained up his dog to be a famous explorer and pioneer in space. Just yesterday, Pa said that soon we will be going back to live in our usual country. We'll be going by plane, I'm glad to say. No more spaceships for me, not ever again.